The views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of Natural Bridges Media or KSQD's staff, volunteers, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Talk of the Bay. I am your host, Len B.A., and I am very pleased to have as my guest today Charles Pasternak. Charles Pasternak began his tenure as Santa Cruz Shakespeare's artistic director in 2023. Before that, he served as artistic director of the Porters of Hellsgate Theater Company in Los Angeles for over 15 years. He has had a wide-ranging career as an actor and director at theaters across this country, including American Players Theater, Alabama Shakespeare Festival, Indiana Repertory Theater, Clarence Brown Theater, the Denver Center, the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey, the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles, 3 seasons with the Shakespeare Festival of St. Louis, and 4 with Shakespeare Santa Cruz, where he is now the artistic director. Charles Pasternak, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thanks so much, Len. I'm really glad to be here.
Great to have you. So you are right in the midst of getting ready for your opening of the season. And I know you've been working long hours dealing with not just the plays themselves, but the technical side and everything else. So give us a little portrait of your days.
Yeah,
at this point.
I'd love to. It's the most magical time. We're working. The whole crew is working such long hours. Our artists, our actors, our artisans, our staff, the board, the president of our board and our previous past president are our site managers. So they're up there every day. We have one of the most wonderful and supportive boards I've ever seen, the most I've ever seen. And they're there all the time helping make this thing happen. I mean, I drove here from technical rehearsal for As You Like It. And after this, I'll be heading right back for our final dress performance tonight, in which we do our photographs and get ready for our first preview. Tomorrow, The Importance of Being Earnest will do the same thing. They'll have their final dress. And so we've been in tech, which is the process in which all of the designers, sets, costumes, sound, lights, they all finally come together in our space, which has been being prepped for months, and start putting the shows together. And they work in rep, which is a magical thing. So today we look at one show, and then tonight, after it's all done, after we're done working at midnight and the tech crews stick around to go over notes, there will be a changeover, and that changeover is shifting to the Earnest set and the Earnest lights and the Earnest costumes. So it's really magical. I can't express how hard everybody's working right now, but it's a magical thing.
Amazing. And for listeners who don't know what repertory theater is, could you give a little explanation of that?
Oh, very happily. It is where one group of actors are hired and they're in multiple shows. And we, as a producing organization, are doing all these shows at once. So our rehearsal hall, it's one of my favorite things in the theater is rehearsing in rep, because Hamlet's rehearsing in one room, As You Like It's rehearsing in another, Ernest is rehearsing in another. Meanwhile, there's a sound rehearsal in another as they practice a song, and there's a props room where they're building all the props, and a costume room, and on breaks there's a green room where everybody congregates, so you see people passing, somebody's running outside, somebody's heading to another rehearsal down the hall. So repertory, I mean, so many of the theaters in this country were built on the repertory idea and the resident company idea, including ACT in San Francisco, among many others, in which one group of artists were in a place and over the course of a year would do a dozen, sometimes more shows, but you could get a lot more done because A, these artists have worked together, so there's a shorthand, and B, that is what they do. They're not jobbing out, they're not looking for other work, they're just there. And so what we have and what a lot of the summer Shakespeare festivals have is sort of a miniature version of some of those original dreams in the regional theater movement of the 60s and some before, where we bring a group of artists together and in repertory, they rehearse multiple shows and they play multiple parts, and our audience gets to enjoy seeing them in You'll see Mike Ryan as Dr. Chasuble, the rector, in The Importance of Being Earnest, a wonderfully funny part. And then you'll see him as Claudius, the new king, the murderer, the antagonist of the piece, in Hamlet. And so you get to see these two very different versions of this wonderful artist that repertory provides for us that most theaters no longer do. And so it's a little magical thing we have here in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, and I've experienced that, having been a fan of Santa Cruz Shakespeare and Shakespeare Santa Cruz before that, of seeing the same actor portray two different, often extremely different roles.
Yeah.
In the course of a weekend. I'll go to a Friday night and then a Sunday matinee or something, and to see that how the same person can embody a completely different character is really a wonderful thing, and it just it actually draws me in even more.
Good.
It's not like oh, wait a minute, he was playing this funny part before, now he's serious. It's more like, oh my God, he's playing this serious part, and it actually makes you release that that suspension of disbelief, as we call it, to say, to enter into the experience of live theater. And I love that about repertory.
I'm so glad. I agree with you. It also gives us a deeper bench in the sense that we can get a great actor to say yes to a great role in one show, and then in the rep, they may be playing a smaller role in the other show. But what's wonderful about that is it creates a world, an ensemble, right? So the smaller role, an actor of that quality might not have said yes to on its own, but they said yes to the bigger role in the other show. But what our audience gets, is this fabulous actor filling out a world in a role that is, again, smaller than they might generally take on, unless they were being paid a ridiculous amount of money. And so you just get better art. You get better quality art in repertory. And it's a model that many theaters have left, and I think it's a real tragedy. I think theater is better in rep. I think the quality of the work is better, and to some extent, it is financially better for us. I mean, we're paying all these actors a contract, of course, but instead of working on one show, they're working on multiple shows that we get to sell, and it's a model that a lot of these sort of the union contracts were sort of built on, again, decades ago, and that very few theaters work in. So I'm so glad to be working at a theater that is still working on that model. And as you said, you get to feel this sort of ownership of your hometown team. You start identifying the actors you like, and you get excited about seeing them in different parts you've never seen them do before, or parts that they're really great at, and maybe they do something similar, and you can get excited about that. Because company is important to me too. We don't have an official company, but an ambition of mine over the next few years would be to build a more formalized group of artists that I make a commitment to and that make a commitment to us. And so we'll see where that goes. But we already, to some degree have some unofficial company members, people that have worked here year after year and that our audience loves. And hopefully at some point in the near future, we'll formalize that a bit more.
Yeah, and you do bring in talent from all over. I mean,
yes.
I've seen actors coming from not just Los Angeles, but New York and Philadelphia and wherever they happen to have been working last. And, and you are able to draw in real talent for your productions. How does that recruiting process work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I watch, and it's a changing world, I watch over, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it's easily over 1,500. It might get close to 2,000 audition videos. And I do live auditions here in Santa Cruz and in Los Angeles and up and down the coast at a few other places. And I'd say that in person I see upwards of certainly a few hundred. Maybe it creeps up to 1,000. So if you combine the live auditions and the videos, I'm looking at 2,500, 3,000 actors maybe. And sometimes it's just headshots and resumes. Sometimes it's full auditions in the room. But I'm considering at some point that number. And, it's a testament to how hard it is to be a professional actor. I was a professional actor for 20 years, jobbing, and had the luck of working a lot, the luck and hard work put into it of working a lot. But I also know what my tax return said at the end of the year. And so while some people, especially in the acting community, may have thought of me as successful, I was just getting by. And so I have the utmost respect for these actors who could make more money in film and TV, but they love theater. They love the experience of coming to a place and being embraced by it. And Santa Cruz is one of the best places in the world to be embraced by. And we have artists that come here because they love being here, and they love our grove, and they love working outside, and they love the work we do. We are unapologetically doing Shakespeare. We are unapologetically doing classic, great plays, and that's exciting to artists that get to be a part of it. So I look at a huge number, and the sad, sort of part of the sad thing is, right, so I have 22 actors in the company this year. At least half of them I had cast before I auditioned to Soul. You know, I had made an offer to Mike Ryan. I had made an offer to Patty Gallagher. I had made these offers. And I think that makes for a stronger company. But it also means the opportunities for this number of people auditioning for me are just less and less and less. Now, with that said, I hired a number of actors from these auditions. A wonderful actress named Brianna Miller came from Cleveland. She sent in a video. A wonderful actress named Ana Takayo is from the Bay Area, and she sent in a video. And I mean, it's just, I happened upon their work. They were right for something we were looking for. And then, you know, so I hire from a number of places, but we have a few actors from New York, probably the most are from Los Angeles, some local artists as well, which is very important. But we want to give Santa Cruz world-class theater. And so to do that, we have to go to the country for them.
Yeah, indeed. And you're being an artistic director, but I know at least last year you also played a lead role in one of the plays.
Yeah.
Are you acting at all this year?
I am, and I'm playing lead roles. I'm doing a lot. I'm playing Hamlet in Hamlet with Mike Ryan.
Fabulous.
So come see two artistic directors battle it out. I'm playing Oliver, the brother, in As You Like It. And I'm playing Jim, the gentleman caller, in The Glass Menagerie. So my plate is full. But this company has a history of actor artistic directors. Mike Ryan, Marco Baricelli, Paul Whitworth, Danny Shea. These were actors leading from the front, and it's a part of our strength. It's a part of what has made this company last, and I think it's a part of why this community has embraced us. It's also a part, I think, of how I more deeply understand the company. I'm in the trenches with them. I'm in tech with them. I'm not just watching from the sidelines. I'm back there. Now, next year, I may direct instead of act. You know, I do that as well. And so it's not that I'll act and play leading roles every year, but it was my first season on my own, and it was important to me to lead from the front and to carry that torch forward that these amazing artistic directors before me carried up to this point, and to meet our audience directly and unapologetically. And without throwing shade on any other artistic directors, most artistic directors in this country are either directors, sometimes they're producers, sometimes they're dramaturgs. We don't have a country with many actor artistic directors left, and I think that's a great shame. Again, with no shade on any individual, I think it's a shame for the industry. I think that actors are the core of theater, and having a deep understanding of what it's like to be on that stage with the community is a vital part of the process when I think about it, and when I think about my actors, and when I think about casting them and how they'll work. If I weren't an actor and I wasn't working alongside these wonderful artists, I would not have anywhere near as deep an understanding of both their talent and what they're capable of, and I think that makes for greater work. We strive for excellence. This is something that, not everybody likes to say anymore, but I want this to be the best classical theater in the country, and we strive for excellence. And to do that, it's important that I know our artists as a collaborator on the stage with them, shoulder to shoulder. And so that's a part of leading from the front. So yes, I'm playing a number of roles this year. I won't do it every year, but I will consistently be returning to our stage.
Wonderful. And you're doing 4 plays. I don't remember you doing 4 plays, or at least not 4 plays with the professional cast in a season. Is that new?
It is new. Yeah. We're very excited about it. We are expanding into September, which we've never done before. And the Grove is a beautiful place to see theater then. And it's still comfortable. The rains haven't come yet. And we've been doing well since the pandemic. And when I was hired, the board said to me, we want year-round programming. Not right away, but we want to get there. We want this community to have that. And I agreed wholeheartedly. And so what's the first step? Well, the first step is using what we already have, which is this beautiful grove and our repertory model. So the Glass Menagerie is rehearsing in the rep with everything else, but it won't open until the very end of the summer season. And then it'll run on its own for 3 weeks in September. And
wow.
It's an American masterpiece. It's a beautiful play of love and poetry and nostalgia and sentimentality. And I want our audience to come out, sit under the stars, visit this beautiful American masterpiece. And I hope it makes an indelible impression. I hope it makes an impression that says you need to come back again. And if it works, there's nothing that stops us from doing more than one show in the fall. There's nothing that stops us from expanding into a rep. So I'm very excited for that. Yeah. It'll be a brand new thing. It's a risk, like any expansion is. So I encourage our audience and yours here and everyone to give us a shot, to come out to the Grove in September and enjoy the Glass Menagerie.
Wonderful. If you're just tuning in to Talk of the Bay here at KSQuid, my guest is Charles Pasternak. He is the artistic director of Santa Cruz Shakespeare, which is just about to start its summer season. And you mentioned you're trying to go more year-round. Do you have other stuff planned after Glass Menagerie?
We do. We're coming back to a holiday show for the first time in the new version of the company's history, in Santa Cruz Shakespeare's history. Right. Famously in this community, Shakespeare Santa Cruz did these holiday pantos at the university for years, and they were beloved, and I'd love us to get back to that. That's not where we can start. We have to start small. We have to see if it works, if the community comes out. We also need to work in an indoor space, which we don't currently have. So we've entered an agreement with the Vets Hall in downtown Santa Cruz, who have this beautiful old theater in their space. And we're going to put up a small cast version of A Christmas Carol. It'll be 5 professional actors, probably 2 kids. I've adapted it. Mike Ryan is going to play Scrooge. Julie James is going to join us for the show, so she'll be in it. She's the audience might know her from running the Jewel Theater here in Santa Cruz for so long. So I'm bringing together these forces of the community, and I'd love to create a holiday tradition here in Santa Cruz. It doesn't feel like we have one theatrically, and Carol is a beautiful story. We're going to fill it with songs. We're going to tell the story in a theatrical and exciting way. Obviously, only 5 actors are doing it, so it's got to be somewhat clever. But it really is we're just aiming to tell Dickens' beautiful little story, which is such a wonderful reminder every year. And hopefully we can create a holiday tradition in which people can return to year after year. And if it works, and if the expansion continues to work, maybe we can look towards doing something bigger at some point as well, or making the carol bigger. I don't know. But first we have to see if this works. And we've gotten a lot of good responses so far. There's a lot of excitement. People are waiting for tickets to go on sale, which they will soon. I'm not allowed to give a date yet, but they will go on sale very soon. Wow. That word will be coming out in the next week or two. It's going to be a special experience. And we'll see. We're rolling the dice and expanding, and I hope the community comes out and tells us they want more.
Great. I'm excited to know that you have something coming up in the holiday season, as we like to call it. That I always enjoyed the panto plays that were put on by the old incarnation of the Shakespeare Company, and truly magical. So that's a great tradition to fall in behind. So tell us a little bit about the plays you're doing for this summer season.
Absolutely. So we're opening with Shakespeare's As You Like It. It is my favorite Shakespearean comedy. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's my favorite. And its greatness is the central character of Rosalind, who is one of Shakespeare's greatest creations. She's magnificent, and it's her story with Orlando. They fall in love at first sight. They both, in different ways, get banished to Arden, the forest of Arden. And in the disguise of a man, Rosalind is in the disguise of a man as Ganymede, and they rediscover each other. But, of course, Orlando doesn't know it's Rosalind. And Rosalind proceeds to teach him how to love, convinces him to woo him, Ganymede, in the place of Rosalind. And the play is about rehearsal. The play is about the ways in which we learn to love each other, and the way, there's young love, there's early love, there's passionate love, and then there's more mature love. And what Shakespeare has done in this play is show us sort of this wild development of love between two people until at the end, when they find each other, it's like they've been waiting for each other the entire time. And I find it so deeply moving. We have a brilliant actress, Charlotte Munson, playing our Rosalind. We have an amazing young actor, named Elliot Segay playing our Orlando. And the brilliant Carrie Perloff, who ran ACT in San Francisco for 25 years. She's a Bay Area legend. She's an American theater legend. And we're very lucky to have snagged her and convinced her to come down. We had a wonderful chat when we were discussing the play. She loves the idea of rehearsal, and the play will very much reflect that. We have, costume racks on stage, prop racks on stage. It's sort of all backstage. We're taking the idea of rehearsal in the play and making that reflective in the design. And that sort of wonderful theatrical atmosphere of just, grabbing a coat and throwing it on. If you need something, you can go get it off a rack. And it's filled with gorgeous music by a wonderful San Francisco-based musician named David Coulter. It's going to be a wonderful night of theater. And what I'll encourage everyone for every one of our plays is that coming to the Grove, seeing a Santa Cruz Shakespeare play is an event. We open our gates 2 hours early. We have the best picnic area in Santa Cruz. It overlooks Monterey Bay.
Yep. It's beautiful.
Yeah, you can get food on site, or you can bring your own picnic. You can bring your wine into the theater, and you can watch this amazing show under the stars with your neighbors, with your community. And so it's not just the play, although I love these plays passionately. It's the event of it and the communal act of being with your neighbors. So that's for all our shows. So that's As You Like It. Our second play is Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. It's one of the greatest comedies ever written in the English language. It's filled with Wilde's great wit. And I mean, the basic story of it is relatively simple. 2 young men want to marry 2 young ladies, and hijinks ensue. There's the great and famous character of Lady Bracknell, who is resisting one of those marriages. And it's one of the wittiest plays. And the great Paul Mullins, I say the great, Santa Cruz audiences know him from his directing work over the last 10 years here. He's a favorite. He's such a wonderful director. He's perfect for this show. I'm so lucky to have him. And it's so sharp. And, we're doing it with 2 intermissions, though it's not a long night, but the play is written in 3 acts, so we're honoring that. So it'll be a very enjoyable evening. Plenty of time to have wine, plenty of time to come back into the theater and enjoy a really, really crackerjack cast. I mean, Mike Ryan as Dr. Chasuble and Marian Adler as Miss Prism, Ali Pratt, the wonderful Ali Pratt, who's been with us for the last few years. She played Lizzie in Pride and Prejudice, which Paul directed in 2019, which was one of our biggest hits. She's back and playing Cecily for us. It's a really great cast, and it's so sharp and so funny. And so maybe it's our gateway of the season. If Shakespeare intimidates you, I still encourage you to come check out the Shakespeare. But come check out The Importance of Being Earnest. And if you love what we do, which I'll bet you will, then maybe come check out a Shakespeare. So those are the first 2.
Yeah.
And then the next one is Hamlet, in which I'm playing Hamlet. Mike Ryan is playing Claudius. It's being directed by Susan Dalian, who's a wonderful Los Angeles-based director who has worked here before as an actress years ago. And we're setting it in the sort of late 60s, early 70s, so contemporary without being modern. Very Nixon era White House, Kennedy era, and the company this year is excellent. Mike and I have so much fun working together. It's going to be a great Hamlet, and it's the greatest. It might be the greatest piece of Western art. Not to oversell its worth, but
it's probably the most famous play in the English language.
Oh, without a doubt, it's the most famous. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Without a doubt, it's the most famous, and it might be the greatest. I don't know, but it's certainly up there, and it's a gift to this community to have this opportunity to come and see it, to come and see these amazing artists tell this greatest of stories. And it's an honor to lead the charge with Mike from the front. And then, as I said, in September, we mount the Glass Menagerie. And, I already talked about it a little, but I have memories of seeing outdoor theater and of being in it here in Shakespeare Santa Cruz, where I just have this sort of indelible impression of belonging, peace, being at the right place, being moved. And The Glass Menagerie is a memory play. Tom tells us that from the very beginning. It's about his mother and his sister and the sacrifices he had to make to become the writer that he was to become, which was Tennessee Williams. And I find it so moving and fragile. It's such a gentle play, even though it's, there's a volcano under that gentleness.
Right. Yeah, Tennessee Williams is not known for being gentle.
No, and it was unlike any other play he ever wrote. And after writing it, he talked about how that's probably the most gentle play I'll ever write. I don't know what it was that prompted him, but he returned to the theme of his sister over and over again, who in real life was institutionalized and then went through a lobotomy, and it was a horrible tragedy, and it haunted him, and he needed to speak to that. Now you don't see anything that horrible in the play, though there is a great heartbreak at the end. Anyway, without waxing too poetic, it's a beautiful, simple play, and I want to sort of in our first fall outside under the stars, I think it's sort of the perfect little gem or piece of glass to offer to our community, and I hope our community rises up and says, yes, we want this, we want more of this, and then we'll give them more.
And for me, I'm someone who has been someone who's enjoyed live theater all my life, introduced to it young, and I still go, often.
Bless you.
And and for me, there's a special magic in that experience of being in front of real live human beings portraying a story.
Oh, yes.
And portraying it with all the passion that the actual experience would have engendered if it was really happening. Well, it is really happening.
Right.
And that's kind of the magic of it, is it's really happening in front of you with real bodies standing there or sitting there or sword fighting there or whatever they're doing right in front of you. And I find that especially compelling in a way that whatever's on the screen, I don't care how big the screen is or how good the sound system, it just can't compare to that, because it's just a projection.
Yeah.
It's not really somebody doing it.
Right.
And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that experience of live theater. Like, is there, obviously we've been portraying stories to each other in person for as long as human beings have had
all of
language.
human history, yes.
But it's in us, I think. But could you talk a little bit about that experience of live theater?
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to an experience of community and communalism. We live in larger and larger cities and communities now. We feel less and less connected to our neighbors. We feel less and less connected to our communities. And a lot of the things that brought people together, religion, people going to church every Sunday, which is not something I have ever done, but I never got to experience that kind of community. The community I grew up with, finally, when I found it, was the theater. And live performance, be it theater, ballet, opera, this can't be replaced by technology. Of all the fears of what AI, the jobs AI might take away, it'll never take away live performance. And, yeah, exactly, right? So it is an opportunity for our community to come together with their neighbors, to sit next to someone you don't know. And by being a part of an audience, you become a part of a single entity. When you see a great comedy and everybody laughs at the exact same moment, or at the end of a great drama when everybody is holding their collective breath, and that's not a figure of speech. I mean, they are collectively holding their breath, right? Something chemically, psychologically happens to you in that group, and there's magic in that, and that's about the releasing of the individual. That's about the embracing of the community, and to be present with somebody actively invoking something on the stage. There's something mystical in this, right? I mean, there is almost something religious. At the end of the night, we leave a ghost light on our stage. That's a tradition in all, in most theaters. And what that does is it's supposed to keep the spirits at bay, because we evoke spirits on stage. It's why actors were thought, heretical in very recently in Shakespearean England, often rogues, because we invoke. And so the experience of live theater is unlike anything else, and we need it. And what really saddens me sometimes is when I hear people talk about how they've never gone to the theater and they don't miss it. And it's like, well, you don't know what you've missed. You don't
Exactly.
know what you're denying yourself. And, people have talked about theater audiences getting old and dying for so long that if it was true, they'd be gone. People find theater maybe later in life. Whatever it is, whatever invites you, when you step into a theater and you experience something communally with an audience, when you experience great art in front of you, in that moment, art that nobody else outside of you and your neighbors will ever see again, even the next night's performance will be different. There's something so definitively in the now of now, in the actual moment, that we live in so rarely these days. How many times a day do I check my phone, right? Without thinking about it. And I'm not trying to go on a tangent about that, but I know every time I do it, it means I'm not in the moment. It means something, my head is wandering, my mind is wandering, I'm somewhere else. It's so rare that we turn these devices off. It's so rare that we sit by our neighbors and agree collectively to have an experience together. And that's what live theater offers us. And that's why it's never going away. And I hope anybody listening to this that hasn't experienced that, I hope this might tempt you to give it a shot, whether it's with us or with somebody else. But give it a shot. It's something truly special.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to take a really short break. We'll be right back with more with Charles Pasternak right after this. Don't touch that dial. Well, if you're just tuning in to Talk of the Bay here on The Squid, I'm your host, Len B.A., and my guest is Charles Pasternak, the artistic director for Santa Cruz Shakespeare. And Charles, you gave a wonderful description of the 4 plays that you're doing this summer season. And you mentioned the Grove, and I want to come back to the Audrey Stanley Grove, which
Please.
is really an exceptionally wonderful place to enjoy theater. And I know it's located in De La Viega Park,
Yes.
in the city park land, and Santa Cruz Shakespeare has an arrangement, obviously, with the city to do that. How did that come into being? I mean, I know you weren't here for the arrangement.
No, I can tell you. It was a miracle. After Santa Cruz Shakespeare was reborn in 2014, led by Mike Ryan and Bill Richter and Rick Wright, Chris Frost, these amazing people that saved our theater. For 2 years, they continued the new company in the old Shakespeare Glen on the university campus. And after 2 years, they were told the Glen was no longer available. And so there was brief discussion of canceling a season. And Mike really led the charge, bless him, to say it could kill us. We lose momentum. We can't do it. We have to keep working. So they found this space up in De La Viega Park, and they built that theater. Rick Wright, our previous past president, who still runs our site committee and is up there every day, I saw him today, was the architect, and they built that theater in 9 months. And if you know what building permits in Santa Cruz are like, if you know what it's like getting approval to build something on public land, to get the lease in order, to do the construction. We're also stewards of the land, and we take that very seriously. But for the initial build, we had to, the trees and the plant life. I mean, there is so much to do so quickly that it is truly a miracle that the first year of the Grove happened. But it did. Like so many things in the history of this company, little miracles popped up, and led by great force of will and passion and luck, the Grove was born. Hamlet and A Midsummer Night's Dream are the first 2 plays on that stage. So this will be the Hamlet this year will be the first repeat on the stage, which is now the Mike Ryan stage. after his retirement last
All right.
year. So Hamlet will be the first repeat. And over the last 10 years, or I should say 9 years, I suppose, we have made it better and better and better. We have improved it more and more. The stage itself, our lighting grid, our seating arrangement, the picnic area, our beer garden behind our sort of ticket booth, queue hut. It gets better every year. It's a passion of our board, of our staff, and I hope of the community. We have amazing volunteers show up every Saturday. Not anymore, not that we're in production now, but in the off season to prep it, because we also have to winterize it and shut it down every year. It's an incredible amount of work. And so it's ours, and as the more it grows and builds, the greater it, it is, I don't know, it already is a great gem of this community, but we strive every year to make it better. And we do, both technically in terms of what we can do on the stage and in terms of just audience enjoyment, satisfaction. So anyway, it's in a eucalyptus grove. There are more and more redwoods now and less eucalyptus as it expands and expands. It's stunning. You look up, you see these gorgeous trees towering over you. When we do our shows at night, we light those trees. Not all the time, but we as part of our lighting design, we fill them with light. And it creates just some of the most gorgeous spectacles. And it's a truly beautiful place. It's a large, wide amphitheater. For a while, we had some sound trouble, but now the company is fully mic'd, so that went away. Again, we're just improving it each year. We are going to break ground on a permanent building on the site sometime this summer. That'll be year-round dressing rooms and green room. That'll be administrative offices. We're in a fundraising campaign for that right now, and we're most of the way there, though we have a little ways to go if anybody out there wants to put their name on a building. It's wonderful to build something both on the stage and off the stage. And our board, especially, Rick Wright and Chris Frost, are wonderful artists in and of themselves, building this thing every year, making it better every year. And so much of it, maybe our audience doesn't actively notice. But over time, slowly, you become aware of a better experience. We're committed to that. And so the Grove is a beautiful space, and we're so lucky to have it. And we're so lucky to expand our usage of it. Plays could be done there from May to halfway through October eventually. Now, if we ever want to do shows in the spring, we got to find an indoor space here, or the late winter. But the Grove has even more potential, and we're building towards that.
Yeah, and I have gone to theater in the Grove for a number of years in a row, and I can affirm that it's really has developed. Like, it keeps getting more comfortable, more pleasant,
Good.
Prettier, more evocative of the theater in terms of using the space to advantage in presenting the pieces. And it really is, all the people doing the work, thank you.
Yeah.
Because it is clearly evident that it keeps getting to be a better and better space.
Yeah, thank you, Len.
You worked as an artistic director with Porters of Hellsgate
Yes.
Theater Company. So you've done artistic directing before.
Yes.
And you had some acting experience here as a cast member.
Yeah.
How did that transition happen for you to take on this job here for Santa Cruz Shakespeare?
It's a wonderful question. It's the closing of a circle in a real way. I founded the Porters in 2006 when I was trying to figure out how to be an actor, what to do, where to make work. And I was doing a lot of work for either very little money or no money. And I decided if I'm going to do theater for no money, I'll do it for myself. And so two buddies of mine and I pooled a small amount of money. I think it was $700 each. And a girlfriend's mom donated our first $1,000. And we did a show.
Great.
Yeah. And we did a show. We did a show on what is that? $3,100. That was renting a theater. That was the very little we spent on costumes. And we paid our actors out of our profits. And luckily, the show went well. And we made a profit. And we paid our actors. And that's how it started. And I share that because our fourth show was Titus Andronicus, and Paul O'Connor, a great actor from Oregon Shakes that had worked with Marco up there, Marco Baricelli, who had just taken over as artistic director here, saw me in that, and Marco was looking for a non-union Romeo. I was non-union at the time. Recommended me to him, and I auditioned and booked the role. Marco brought me up to Shakespeare Santa Cruz that summer. That was 2008. It was not my first professional job, but my first regional job, the first job that took me out of LA or New York. And I had the most magical summer of my life. And I just said to myself, this is what I want to do. And from there, I, through hard work and luck, built a national career working at theaters all across this country, many of them through my connections here in Santa Cruz, through the directors I worked with here. And I kept running the Porters, sometimes in any gaps I had between shows, professionally, and also even from afar. I learned the lessons of collaboration and bringing a great team together and an artistic board and fundraising. We eventually did, pay people not just out of profits. And so I was doing all of this at once because my need to work, my need to do Shakespeare, my need to create, if I had a gap between jobs, I needed to do something, and the Porters offered me that. And so the Porters and that work as an artistic director in some way led to my first job here and in Santa Cruz. And my first job in Santa Cruz led to a great deal of my professional career. And so I built up a resume as an artistic director and as an actor and as a director. And then when Mike Ryan decided he was going to retire, bless him, he gave the board 5 years notice. And they started with a collection of names. I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but maybe 20, 25 of people who had worked, that had history at this company. Before they did a national search, they wanted to see if they could find somebody with a history here to carry the torch forward. And through a long interview process, we're now in COVID, that happened all over Zoom. I think I did 7 or 8 interviews. They settled on me. And I count it the greatest blessing and honor of my life to return to this theater that gave me so much, to lead it, and I hope to make it better. Not because there was anything wrong with what they were doing before, but because any successful institution, if it's doing its job and passing the reins along in the right way, should be made better by the person that comes next, And I'm very lucky the artist that took over as artistic directors of the Porters in Los Angeles, a young man named Will Block, is up here this summer as an actor. Wow. And he's doing better things with that company than I had done. He's growing it in ways that I didn't. And I'm so proud of him. And I know that Mike is proud of me, and whoever I hand the reins off to, I hope they do even more with it than I did. It's not about ego, it's about continuum and community. And so that's maybe a long-winded short version of sort of how I got here. And I hope to be here for quite a while.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to have it fall together like that, the serendipity of all those pieces
I know.
Working and becoming known so that people know, oh, we know how this person works.
Right.
Like you can only get that through experience, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those. It's so the arts is hard for many art. It's hard in that there's no, you go to medical school, and you put in the work. You're going to be a doctor, and if you're a doctor, you're going to make at least X amount of money, right? There's none of that guarantee in the arts. You just keep scraping, and if you love it enough, you keep fighting, and it's the narratives we tell ourselves, right? Like I told you before, to some degree, I was a successful actor. I was working all the time. But if you looked at my tax returns, you wouldn't have thought of me as very successsual.
It's not a well remunerated
it's not.
profession,
But
unless you're in the top 1 or 5%
Exactly.
or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we define success?
Yeah.
And this job is not only a blessing because I discovered I'm really good at it, but also it tells a lovely narrative arc, doesn't it? I scraped for all those years, and now here I am.
Yeah.
And I wish that for everyone. Life isn't fair, and not everybody gets that. But as of right now, I got it. I will never take that for granted.
And I wanted to kind of go sideways into the issue of how we support the arts.
Yeah.
Now, I know in Santa Cruz Shakespeare, less than the majority of your funding comes from ticket sales.
Right.
I know you get some grants.
Yeah.
How is that working?
Yeah, the basic breakdown is actually about 50-50. And this year, we're even, because of our recent success, we're even, ticket sales are edging into the sort of 55% range of
Wonderful.
our budget, which is great. Our individual donors make up close to the other 50%. Yes, we get grants, and yes, we have some corporate sponsorship, but it's very small. We can do better. And the community, the business community, once we can make contact with them, perhaps can do better at finding collaborative ways to work together. We can do better about corporate sponsorships. And we're always striving to widen our donor base. And that's about the small ball and the big ball, right? I mean, it's about the big donors that can give enough to change a season, to sponsor a show. And that's about everybody that loves us deciding, you know what, I'm going to give them at least $5 a month. Because unlike most theaters in this country, we operate on a membership model, not a what's the word? I'm thinking scholarship, subscriber model, right? So most theaters in this country work on a subscriber model where essentially they'll sell ticket packages to all their shows. And as we've seen across this country, that model is working less and less. We work on a membership model. So essentially our members commit to us X amount of money. They don't get tickets for that. They get discounts on tickets, and they get lots of membership perks based on the level of their membership. All of this can be found on our website at santacruzshakespeare.org. But it's about everyone that loves us becoming a member at some level, even if that's $5 a month or $50 a year. And so we do well in that, but we can always do better. And so we're close to 50-50 because of our recent success. Ticket sales are edging into the 55 range, which is lovely, but it's also, how long is that sustainable, right? So
you don't know that's going to happen from season to season. It's not predictable.
You don't. So could there be more government funding for the arts? Absolutely. But complaining about it seems like, what's a PC way to say this on the radio?
Yeah. Perhaps doesn't yield any result.
Perhaps doesn't yield any result. But it isn't better not to dwell on what can't be changed, though I'm happy to support campaigns that look for more funding of the arts. And continuing to expand our reach out, our invitation to anyone to continue to support us. And we need to make that about Santa Cruz businesses and businesses of the Monterey Bay area as well. We reach thousands and thousands of people each summer. We're a core community event. We're not just one day. We last the whole summer. So we have something really good to offer, and we're stepping up our efforts to offer that to more businesses, and that can change the game. That could bump us up to the next level.
Right.
So yeah, that's
and you do some wonderful offerings too, where you have school kids coming in and seeing plays. I don't know if it's for free or very discounted. How does that work?
It's both. We have a small charge for some schools, but we give Title I schools free admission to all our shows. All our student matinee shows. What we could do better at, or what we're always trying to do better at, the struggle is often transportation. It's often getting those buses. But all Title I schools see our shows our student matinees for free. We have this wonderful student matinee program that's been going for a few years, but it has massively expanded this year. We have 3 student matinees of Hamlet, 3 student matinees of As You Like It, 2 student matinees of Ernest, 4 student matinees of Menagerie, and 8 student matinees of Christmas Carol. So we've made every show available, and it's working. They're coming. Getting kids into the theater is one of the most important parts of our mission. We want them to see a show at our theater before they graduate. Ideally, every kid in the community, in the city, eventually the county. And so we're doing good work there, and we're expanding there. And we want to make sure that money is never a barrier. But there's always more work to do. Our director of education, Rebecca Clark, is doing lovely work. We're sort of piloting a summer teenage intensive this year, which is underway right now, actually. And we're looking to expand more in-school options, potentially small touring show options. We're looking into a lot of that in the coming years. But our student matinee program is something we're so proud of, because really, to me, maybe the most important thing as far as educational outreach is getting our kids to see shows in our theater.
Yeah, and I know, I went to public school, in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
We'd had to read a Shakespeare play.
Sure.
And reading a Shakespeare play is, I'm not saying don't do it. It's fine. It's a good thing to do. But there's a huge difference when you're relatively inexperienced in life and certainly inexperienced in exposure to live theater
100%.
between reading a Shakespeare play and seeing it performed by a professional company. And so, that there's that difference of really seeing it brought to life and how it comes to life that is not evident on the page.
No, and expertise in anything breeds love. Anything we start to understand and get to know, we'll want more of, because it feeds into deeper parts of ourselves and our thought process and our unconscious, right? So I think I don't want to stop any kids from reading Shakespeare in school. I hope they have a great teacher that encourages them to read it aloud and make something of a theatrical event out of that study, because these plays were written to be heard live. And I think an introduction to Shakespeare through seeing our professional show will make a lot of kids fall in love with Shakespeare in a way that reading it in class never will. And unfortunately, sometimes, if it's just read in a dry manner and you're just answering essay questions, will turn some kids off of Shakespeare,
Right.
which is just so sad to me, not only because I love him and think he's the greatest artist in the history of the world, but because they didn't get a fair shot at encountering him. It was something dry. It was something academic in language that's harder to understand until you get to know it. And so I hope a lot of kids in our community will first encounter Shakespeare, or early encounter Shakespeare, through our professional work.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful lesson in a way. We all know, you talk to somebody who's, 30 years younger than you, and they have slang that you don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's just 30 years or a generation.
Totally.
Whereas you think Shakespeare, this stuff was written in the 1600s.
Right.
Of course, we're not going to understand every word, or the way things are phrased is going to seem unfamiliar.
Totally.
But when it is brought to life and you have all the body language and the context, it's very understandable.
Yeah.
And it's magical that way.
It is. And I when it's done well, I compare it to subtitles in movies. If you see a movie with subtitles, at least for me, for the first 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, I'm aware of it. I'm just slightly aware that I'm reading something. But within 5 or 10 minutes, I totally forget about it. I'm just watching the movie.
Right.
And with Shakespeare, if we're doing our job right, you might be aware of the different language for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then it slowly fades out. This isn't Old English in the sort of official sense. It's our modern English. It's early modern English, and Shakespeare, of course, in his genius, was inventing part of our English. So much of it. I mean, between Hamlet and As You Like It, you'll hear so many things that you're like, oh, that's where that's from?
Yes.
And it's like
they're in our language.
Yeah, it's a quote attack, right? And so if we do our job right, it's not as distant and foreign and strange as some people fear. It just takes a little while. Just 5 or 10 minutes as the play opens, and we got to work a little harder to take our time and to make sure you can hook in. And then if we're doing our jobs, you'll get it. You will.
Yeah. Well, we have just a couple minutes left. I know that listeners can get tickets at santacruzshakespeare.org.
Yeah.
And I want to give you the rest of the time, Charles. Just tell us what it is about all this that makes it really important for us to have a truly vital and vibrant culture.
Yeah. It makes us a community. It makes us a civil society. When I look at the world, and what I sort of look at as a lot of the negatives right now are about insulation, they're about our own echo chambers, They're about that we don't talk to each other, and we don't put up with other people having different points of view. We have an allergy to ambiguity. We want black and white. We want right or wrong. And art and seeing art with your community breaks down those walls. And the fact that a city the size of Santa Cruz has a festival of this size and this eminence on the sort of national stage is unbelievable. And the pride I hope this community takes in having this company, and the pride I have in leading the charge for a little while and trying to give this community something back and something more. Again, we so often, unfortunately, we only recognize these incredible gems when we lose them. And this community has come close to losing this company multiple times, and this community has risen up to save it multiple times. And for that, I owe a debt. We owe a debt. We owe great work. We owe great art. We owe a community experience. And we're giving it. And we will continue to try to give it better and better every year. And I want this community to come and appreciate what it gave birth to, what it saved, what it owned. And by doing so, keeping it as a part of themselves. Our Santa Cruz Shakespeare is a part of Santa Cruz.
It truly is. Charles Pasternak, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Len. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.